So, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to see a lot of people joining us with this 2 days adventure, I will say. I'm Silvio Peroni. I'm, let's say, responsible for the Barcelona Declaration at the University of Bologna, associate professor here, and the director of OpenCitation. And I'm basically here with a couple of other guys that are involved in this adventure with me. Actually, the majority of the stuff has been done by the others. I'm here just, presenting the whole thing, but they have done the job. So I would like to start just to, I know that this is unusual to start to, say thank you to people at the very beginning, but they have done a great job in doing that. So I would like to ask you a first round of applause to all the organizers. Also, I would like to thank Fondazione Alma Mater and ADB Eventi and Congressi that are providing us administrative organizational support for the event. So thank you so much. They are the guys that you have already met in the registration desk, and you will see them around for the entire 2 days workshop. So thank you for helping us with the organization of this event. Another round of applause would be great. Thank you. And last but not least, I would like to thank for the support RAW that is offering community support for the organization of the event. So last round of applause. Before starting, so very quickly, I will leave the stage to representative of the University of Bologna right now for a very quick introduction, some greetings, initial greetings, and then the entire organizations of the first day will be held by Bianca formally, and all the other, Bianca Kramer, Ludo, and all the other people of the Barcelona Declaration, since the first day is entirely dedicated to the Bologna meeting on the Barcelona Declaration, with a lot of workshops and work to do together. But before starting, I would like to invite here Professor Raffaella Campaner. Please, Raffaella, if you can come, who is Vice Rector for International Relations at the University of Bologna, just to have some institutional briefings start.
So thank you very much. Really glad to be here, and thank you to Silvio and to the colleagues for the kind invitation. So welcome. So dear colleagues, dear speakers, dear guests, both in presence and online. I must say it's a great pleasure to see this room so filled with people. A very warm welcome to the University of Bologna, also on behalf of the rector, Professor Giovanni Molari, who's currently in Osaka for the Expo with an institutional visit. I'm very glad to be here with you today, and I will just send very few initial remarks. So this workshop on open citations and open scholarly metadata tackles crucial issues for us all, issues which more or less explicitly, and I would say with greater or maybe not that great awareness, we all address every single day. It's part and parcel of our daily work. So they are part of our job as members of the research community. So the Barcelona Declaration on Open Research Information and the previous editions of the workshop have called for joint action and urged significant changes in addressing the production and dissemination of scientific knowledge. You're attending the workshop here today and tomorrow, both in presence and online, clearly shows the involvement of a very large range of actors from different countries, different continents, with different expertise, different disciplinary perspectives, and from many different institutional entities, both in the academia and outside academia. So the roadmap you're following and pushing further is widely shared. And let me stress, as the Vice Rector here, that Bologna is very much committed into this respect. Our institutions are constantly committed to pursue strategies and establish policies that are consistent with the principles of the Barcelona Declaration. The aims called to orient the production and sharing of scientific knowledge, the management of its sources, the collection, testing, and comparing of data, the management of infrastructures and the cost of infrastructures, all the efforts in testing and sharing the communication of results. So what you've been focusing and will be discussing during the workshop, and I guess also in our daily activity, has to do with transparency, responsibility, and integrity. It has to do with the progress of scientific knowledge and its inclusive use for the benefit of the largest possible number of people around the globe. So as the Vice Director of International Relations, let me conclude with a deep thank to you all. In a global scenario which is increasingly unstable and fragile, in a global scenario in which new boundaries and new constraints are being put, and in a global scenario in which many collaborations these days are being questioned and challenges, working together on and for open research amounts, I believe, both to playing a transformative role, both as individuals and collectively all together, and to being truly faithful to the mission and value we all share as research institutions. To end, a very deep thank to all the organizers, both in Bologna and elsewhere, to the organizing committee, and I wish you all very enjoyable and fruitful meeting, which I'm very sure it's gonna be. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Silvio, for starting the meeting off and introducing. Thanks, Raffaella, for your kind introduction from the university. Okay, so as Silvio said, this meeting is, the whole meeting is 2 days. This day will be dedicated to the Bologna meeting on open research information, discussing the Barcelona Declaration, where we are now, how we are proceeding. And we really want to involve all of you in these discussions, both in the room, people in the room, and people online. I would like to briefly go over the program for today. We're still in the part of official welcome and housekeeping. We'll soon move on to a general introduction about the Barcelona Declaration. We have a mix of people, both in the room and online, people who have been involved from the start, from early on, people who are actively engaged in working groups, coordinating working groups, but also people who are joining this type of meeting for the first time and have maybe not heard so much about the Barcelona Declaration. So we'll do a general introduction and update you on where we currently are. Then we've got 3 presentations by new signatories of the Barcelona Declaration, or by existing signatories telling about the developments that have happened. After that, we'll have a coffee break of half an hour, and then we'll go into the interactive part of this meeting. We'll introduce you to the working groups and the breakout sessions, and then we'll have 2 one-hour breakout sessions. One between 12 and 1, followed by a long lunch break. We are in Italy, people like their food here. We'll have a long lunch break. Then we'll do a recap of that first breakout session, followed by the second breakout session. I'll explain more about that once we get there. After the break later in the afternoon, we'll do a recap of that, and then we'll end with a broader discussion of the next steps for the Barcelona Declaration. So that's sort of the program for today. We went over this. One additional housekeeping remark for people online. You know how this works by now. Please turn off your microphone if you're not speaking, because that makes it an easier, better experience for all of us. You can keep your camera on. We'd love that. Okay, with that, I'd like to start. Maybe I also should introduce myself before launching into all this housekeeping. My name is Bianca Kramer. I'm Executive Director of the Barcelona Declaration. And in that capacity, I'll tell you a little bit now about what is the Barcelona Declaration, where did we come from, where are we now? And as I'm doing that, also introduce you to some of the other people involved in the Declaration. So the Declaration, it's in its name. It's really about the transition to open research information. And to start with that, I'd like to do something a little bit interactive, to have a little bit of a discussion about what do we mean, what is research information? What do we mean by research information? The way we say it in the Barcelona Declaration is that research information is about metadata. It can be bibliographic metadata. It can also include funding information, information on use and impact. In general, it's information about research. It's not publications itself. It's not research data itself. It's information about the outputs of research, about the actors of research, and also about the use and impact. That may still sound a little bit abstract. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at what we mean by metadata. When I put this on screen and I ask people what it is, let's play that game. What are we looking at? An article, thank you. Depending on the setting, people also sometimes say this is a freedom of information request. In this case, we're looking at an article. It's blacked out because it's not about one specific article, but just an article in general. So without knowing what this article is about, can we say what this is? People online, please put it in the chat. People here, just shout out. Yeah, the journal. Yeah, information about the journal, the DOI, the volume, page numbers, etc. This one, title. This one, authors. Yeah, authors and affiliations. This one, you're good. So then, that's all sort of on the front page. When we go to the back part of the article, the last part. Yeah, acknowledgements, which can also often include information about the funder, for instance. And this one. Exactly, references, citations, references. So all that is what we would consider metadata, in this case, bibliographic metadata. Metadata is all the information about an article. It can also include, for instance, language, the publication type, the discipline, copyright license information. That's sometimes not information that's included in the article itself, but it's information about the article. And also, for instance, when we talked about authors, that can include ORCIDs for authors. For affiliations, that can include WAR IDs for affiliations. So all of this is what we would call metadata. Research information. So that's an illustration of this first point. So why is this important? Why is this metadata, this research information, so important? It's important because it's information that's being used in decision making by institutions, by funders, by governments. It's decision making around strategic priorities, distribution of resources, and also in evaluation of researchers and institutions. It's also used to assess the effect of policies. Again, by funders, institutions, governments. When you think of open access policies, how do we assess the effect of open access policies? By looking at information about the output, using metadata to collect all the output from a specific institution, for instance, and then checking how much of it is which type of open access. And importantly, it's also used by researchers themselves and by more general people with an interest in research in society to find and assess research results. So research information has a lot of use cases. And just to clarify again, this is about metadata. When we say research information in the context of the Barcelona Declaration, we talk about metadata. We don't talk about research data as a result of research. So we don't talk about MRI scans or interview data or instrument measurements. We talk about metadata. And the other point is, we call for openness of metadata, of research information, and I'll go into that in a second. But just to get this out of the way from the start, we don't call for a blanket openness of any information, especially when it's about institutions. We don't call for openness of all your internal information. It's really about, this is a quote from the Declaration, openness will be the norm for research information we produce, with an exception for information for which openness would be inappropriate. So again, putting out this, this well-known phrase, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. Having said that, maybe going back to research information, where do we find that research information? Where is that located? Well, first of all, in bibliographic databases. And this is where often researchers and institutions collect information from. If you want to know what's published on a certain topic or what's published by a certain author, by a certain institution, you can use, I didn't put these up at random, but we'll talk about that. However, there are more places where we find research information. When it's about data sets, research data sets, information about research data that can be found in data repositories. When software is a research output or a reflection of research activity, that can be found in software archives. Institutional repositories also make their output available, including metadata. And also in quiz systems of universities, the current research information systems, that's also where universities collect information about the activities and outputs of their researchers. And that sometimes goes back into the institutional repositories. So all places where we find research information. Now, why do we say at the Barcelona Declaration that research information should be open? There's a couple of reasons for that. When we assess researchers and institutions, those are important decisions. And when that assessment is done based on non-transparent evidence, there's little accountability. And it's often very hard for the people or organization being assessed to know exactly what they are assessed about, what they are assessed on. So we would say that fair assessment requires full transparency. In addition, when we're think back of the examples I have on the screen, especially like Scopus and Web of Science, closed information sources. They're not only closed, you can only access them when your institution pays a hefty fee, but they're also selective. And you can say many things about its selectivity, but it often means that if we use these closed databases, then we're making a decision based on information that's biased. Biased by that selectivity, which often means biased against non-English language, biased against like certain types of research, biased in favor of STEM and against humanities, for instance, and biased against certain geographical regions by the virtue of what is being selected to be included in these databases. And because these databases are closed, we really don't have any say in that or any choice in what's included. We would say equitable decision making requires inclusive data. And then finally, when we talk about open science, we talk about monitoring and incentivizing open science, and we do that based on closed data. That doesn't feel right. That's a bit of a forum. So we would say open science also requires not just open access to publications, not just open research data, but also open research information. So one of the reasons why we think research information must be open and why we think that the transition from closed research information to open research information is important. And what does it mean for researchers? If you are a researcher yourself, if you are representing an institution, what does it mean for the researchers in your institution? And what does that mean for how important it is for you as an institution? So for researchers, the question could be, where is information about your research outputs and activities located? Where is that information? And who, and there I mean really who around the world, can actually find and use information about your research output? Is that accessible? Is that findable to anyone who might have an interest to it? Or is it only accessible and findable for people in other institutions that happen to have a subscription to those closed databases? Also, when it's about assessment and evaluation, what types of research output are used in assessment and evaluation? Is that known? Is that transparent to you? And then how open is that information on which that assessment is based? And then finally, and that becoming increasingly important in the general discussions, who owns and controls research information? Lots of discussions about academic sovereignty, digital sovereignty, who actually has control over that information? So these are questions that are important to researchers and that you can also use to have this discussion with researchers. And as institutions can be a reason to think really strategically about how you handle research information and how you make that information available. Which brings us to the Barcelona Declaration. All this background about what is research information And why is it important? And why is it important that it is open? That led us in drafting the Barcelona Declaration, now about 1.5 years ago, to formulate 4 commitments. And those commitments are commitments for organizations that carry out, fund, and evaluate research. So it's for universities, for funders, for governments. And what we ask, what we invite these organizations to commit to are these 4 commitments. First of all, to make open as the default for the research information we both use when we subscribe to external databases, where we get the information from, to fill our quiz system, to fill our institutional repositories, and also the research information we produce and we make available ourselves. Again, perhaps in quiz systems, institutional repositories. Second, to make that possible, to work with services and systems that support and enable open research information. To see in our discussions with publishers, for instance, when we negotiate contracts, can we include openness of research information in those contracts? When we decide which database to use, do we include openness criteria in that? So that's the second commitment. The third commitment goes hand in hand with that, because those services and systems are important, and they can only exist and they can only further develop if they are actually both being used and also supported. So that's about supporting the sustainability of infrastructures for open research information. That can both be financial, or it can also be by, for instance, participating in governance and having a discussion with systems about to what extent are they indeed community governed or not. And then the final one is perhaps also the one where we are here together today, because these are these commitments. When institutions sign the Barcelona Declaration and commit to these commitments, that's in the end, it's something that each institution has to implement internally. But to do that and to be able to do that and to make that easier, it's important to also have, or we feel it's important to also have a collective around that, because there are many questions around that. I think each option that I just called, or what an institution could do, can raise questions. Like, how do you have that conversation internally? If we talk about publishing negotiations, that's something that each individual consortium or each individual institution has to figure out by themselves, or can it be beneficial to work together on that, to identify the barriers, to identify the opportunities, and to move forward together? So that's why the last commitment is about supporting collective action to accelerate that transition. So these are the 4 commitments to the Barcelona Declaration. As of today, since the declaration was launched in April last year, a little over a year ago now, the declaration has been signed by 111 organizations in 28 countries. And that includes, as I said, universities, other research institutions, research funders, and governments. On one hand, of course, we say 111 and we say 28 countries, because we're very happy with those 28 countries. But we also have to be honest. When you look at where those signatories are located, there's a center of gravity in Europe. We are very happy to also have representation and involvement from Latin America, from North America. If we zoom in on Europe itself, we can see that, again, there's a lot of interest from France, from Spain, from Italy, from Germany, from the Netherlands, but also interest from many Eastern European countries that we're also very, very happy about. So on one hand, it's really important to have that diverse representation and involvement. In the other hand, we still have a way to go to increase that, because we are currently also biased in the people that we have involved with the declaration. So far, I talked about signatories. I talked about the commitments of the declaration being aimed at universities and funders and governments. But of course, as we already said, what's needed to make this happen is also the availability of services providing data, metadata infrastructures, organizations providing that. So we're very happy to also have the formal support of these organizations. Currently, it's about over 50. There's a selection of these. I hope many of you who are representing one of those institutions recognize yourself on this slide. And we're very happy to have this combination of signatories, so universities, funders, governments, and of organizations providing data, services, and infrastructures, because together they can make this transition happen. They need each other. So we're very happy also in the working groups, which we'll say more about later, that there's really collaboration between these two groups. And also many organizations that have not yet signed the declaration for various reasons. Really also very interesting differences geographically and contextually about when an organization feels they can sign or want to sign. But regardless, there are many organizations that have expressed an interest in the declaration, even if they're not ready, they feel they're not ready to sign it yet. And we're also very happy to collaborate with those organizations, also in the working groups. Again, you'll hear more about that later. To make the reach of the declaration larger, we're also very happy with the contributions from many people who have worked to translate the declaration in different languages. And these are all available on the Barcelona Declaration website. So, what are the next steps? How do we make sure that this transition to open research information, that as a group of people representing signatories, supporters, or people interested in the declaration, is actually going to happen? I just want to show some examples of concrete progress. Some of them you've seen before, some of them might be newer. Very nice early example is from Sorbonne University, who unsubscribed from Web of Science and then also decided to redirect some of the saved money towards supporting open alternatives. So really concrete example. We know of other examples of universities canceling or considering to cancel either Web of Science or Scopus or their analytics products like Insights or SciVal. So I think it's really nice also to be able to show that this is possible. Another example in Leiden, CWTS, who traditionally had their Leiden ranking, which was based on Web of Science data, now for 2 years have produced an open edition of that Leiden ranking, fully based on OpenAlex data, which also means, for one, it means that now also the underlying data and algorithms can be fully transparent, which is really important when we talk about rankings. Remember what I said, if you're being assessed, know what you're being assessed on. So the transparency, and also in the process of doing so, they had many discussions with OpenAlex to improve their affiliation data. So it's an example how these developments also in collaborating with these open resources can make those open data sources better for everyone. If you want to know more about this, Nace is in the audience. You can ask him all about this. Another example from a funder, Dutch funder NWO, who decided to implement grant IDs, so DOIs for their grants, to be able for that information about their grants to be available transparently in a standardized format, and also to make it easier for those for the grants to be linked to the eventual output. We can talk more about that in the working group about funding data, but making those connections is often quite difficult. We showed you the acknowledgement section in the text. That often includes the name of the funder. To extract that as usable, like structured information, is quite difficult. So it really helps if funders adapt the grant IDs to also make information about their grants openly and structuredly available. And then finally, a meeting this spring in Gothenburg, where the where the Nordic bibliometricians came together to discuss about open infrastructure for bibliometrics. So I think that is a really nice example of like interested people from different countries coming together and see how they could move that forward. Morgan's in the audience. I'm sure you can explain more about that to people who are interested in that. So quite some nice examples of organizations moving forward, either individually or collectively. And of course, we want more of that. So I think to make this happen and to move this transition forward, what we want to do from the Barcelona Declaration is to support that change, support change at institutions and organizations. And that can be changed at a technical level, when it's about about PIDs, about persistent identifiers, what systems to use, operational level. So what do you do in information literacy? How do you use that? How do you make a transition at the operational level? But also very much at the strategic level. What are the strategic decisions leading this transformation, these changes? So to support those changes at institutions, what we intend to do from the Barcelona Declaration, what we hope to support is facilitate and support collective action in the working groups. Again, more on that later. And also do more dissemination and outreach to increase the reach and impact of the declaration. And that's, of course, also something we want to work together with you on. To be able to do this, Barcelona Declaration started, as I said, about 1.5 years ago, from a group of people motivated to do this, committed to do this. We got together a larger group of interested people. We got the declaration out there. We got the first, the signatories. But we also realized that to be able to do this on a bit longer term and to do this more structurally, we needed to organize a little bit more. So what happened this year is that in January, 3 organizations, CWTS, COSEF, and Xerox Foundation, they signed an MOU to financially support the declaration and to financially support those actions that I just mentioned for a period of 3 years. Because we hope we won't be in this for the indefinite term. We hope to see progress. And if in the end, that might mean 3 years or a bit longer, an organization like this is no longer needed, then we've done our job. So as part of that, it allowed the appointment of an executive director, which is why I'm standing here in this place before you. And it also, very importantly, allowed us to hire a community manager. And that is Barbara Rivera Lopez. This is our first meeting, so can I ask you for a round of applause for me? We currently also have a steering group deciding on the strategy for the Barcelona Declaration. That currently consists of representatives of those 3 supporting organizations. So that's Ludo Waldman. Are you? Yes. Ginny Hendricks from COSEF. And Bernardo Rondelli from CIRIS. Yes. And in addition to that, organizations who have also been involved in the declaration from the beginning, from Koki, that's Campaner, and from Sorbonne University, Amelie Church. Yeah. So far, those are the people who are also with whom we're discussing the strategy. We want to move on from that. We want to have a more formal or formalize that governing board or the steering board a little bit more, and also invite wider participation in that. We'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the day. We're running slightly over time, but we're getting there. So far, what I've talked about is what we from the Barcelona Declaration organization are trying to do. But I want to bring this back to the signatories and the supporters of the declaration, because in the end, that's where the change really needs to happen. So that's why I'm very happy that for the second part of the program, we will have 3 short presentations of signatories of the declaration. who will say a little bit more about the process within their own organization and their goals with the Barcelona Declaration. And we'll hear from Carla Carbonell Cortez from Fundación La Caixa. We'll hear from John Chodacki from California Digital Library, and we'll hear from Anna Ranitovic, who will be representing the Dutch signatories to the declaration who are collaborating together. John and Anna are in the audience, in the room. Carla is also in the audience, but online. So this is a moment where I can ask for your patience while we set up this so that Carla can present from online.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bianca, and thank you everyone for letting me join you online. I really rather be there with you, but as I was telling Bianca, we had the health research panels last week and we are closing everything and it's been impossible to travel, but hopefully I can join you online and share also your experiences. So thank you very much. Nothing, just to put you a little bit in context for those who don't know La Caixa Foundation, I usually say that it's like 3 foundations in one. We have 3 huge, big different areas: social and educational programs, cultural and science dissemination, research fellowships, and innovation. And I'm part of the research fellowships and innovation area. It's what I'm going to be talking about. Within the research and innovation and fellowships area, we have 3 big sections. Research and innovation calls, for now 2 big calls, but hopefully moving forward with the new strategic plan that we are working on as we speak. Different fellowship programs, 2 non-research, 2 research fellowships, and structural research collaborations with big research centers and hospitals in Spain and Portugal. And right now building a new research center that's going to be placed in front of Cosmocaixa, the science museum that we also own, and that's going to be hosting more than around 500 researchers in immunology from different points of view. So once said that, why signing Barcelona Declaration? Well, we've been talking about all this with Bernardo and Lely, with Bianca for quite a long time, and finally, because in La Caixa sometimes some things internally take a bit long, but for us was quite clear, mainly. And just big ideas: contextualize our own funding metadata with others, better use of bibliographic metadata, contribute with more rigorous and inclusive transport evaluation, and what we like to do in these matters and others in this line: institutional leadership and positioning with best practice on science. That's from the point of view of the La Caixa Foundation, but now that the research center is starting to be reality, and hopefully it's going to be there at the end of the year, it is also really a huge opportunity for the research center to just position the research center for more credibility and funding opportunities, align the biomedical data hub initiative in the research center with the high quality biomedical data set and resources, alignment with the Innovation Data Hub also, that it's been working for a couple of years already with the objective of the Institute, and focus on open research, and obviously for global collaborations and visibility, joining international open research initiatives. That's for sure a goal that some of the new members of the research centers are focusing. They've been focusing for the last year and a half. Also, we have analyzed internally different potential interest in open science that we have from the point of view of La Caixa Foundation and from the point of view of the research center. I'm not going to go into details, but we are already doing obviously some things on some of these topics, but in some others we are not where we would like to be. So we have on place an internal policy for open access and even open data for our researchers since 2018. So we are okay in that, and I'm going to show you some information on that. We give some trainings on how to make the data fair for our researchers, but I would say that we are not where we would like to be on open software or open methodology from the internal point of view. Our processes are completely open and published on the website, but for example, in my opinion, we don't have the proper platform or processes to share, for example, the software that we use internally on our, for example, AI processes. So we are doing some things already. We've been doing some things for some years, but we have quite a room for improvement. And joining Barcelona Declaration, and as we've been joining also COARA, really, we really think that ONA helps us and push us on that direction. So actions that we've been doing for now, obviously, we've been following DORA and the Leiden Manifesto, although, as I was telling you before, in La Caixa Foundation, some, I would say, internal processes take longer than we wish. We never get to sign, and when we were to, COARA appeared, Barcelona Declaration appeared, so we decided to go for the later options. But for example, since we have been doing some actions, impact that we are causing since 2015 to actual 2024, we've increased the publications in open access over than 30%, just with the I would say different actions that we've been doing in the last years, although we have a really lot room for improvement. For example, some other initiatives that I would like to share. We have two different social research calls led by the Social Observatory that have the practitioners part of the evaluation process. We've been analyzing those results, and we really know and believe that having practitioners in this kind of evaluation processes for this type of research makes the process more fair and more aligned with the social needs behind those calls. So having practitioners here made really a difference of the goals and to be able to reach the goals of those calls in social research sciences. The last example that I wanted to share with you and that we've been talking with Bianca lately is the different also actions that we've been doing in one of our big calls, the health research calls, that is launched once a year and that is based for 5 thematic areas and has a remote phase and interview phase with more than this last year 700 proposals. So for us here, it was a change from the second edition to the third, and since then it was really important, and we removed any idea related to the, I would say, old conception of curriculum. So we don't accept curriculum vitae from the applicants. We just ask them specific information related to the potentiality of the team and the research consortium related to that proposal. We don't accept the long list of publications. We just ask them for a maximum of 5 publications, the main 5 publications related to the proposals. You can see here the type of information we request to the applicants here in this section. Also the guidance that we give to our reviewers, that they have to focus only in the information that is on the application form, not just go and look for more information. We actually request them to readapt their comments if they and the information that they give, they comment about the age impact factor or whatever. We don't really want them to be focusing on that information, and that is really clear on the information that we share with them and the guides that we share with them about how the criteria should be evaluated. And that's a fast and short overview. I hope I'm not over time. And if you want to ask anything related to that at the end of all the presentations, I would be really happy to go deeply in any of the subjects. But again, for us, it is really interesting to be able to join Barcelona Declaration and share with all of you, and hopefully soon be part of the different working groups to improve on our processes and mainly help us push internally our organization, as it is so wide organization and has been historically more focused on social programs. Sometimes the research initiatives are more difficult to understand from our board. So being part of all this forum and you're gonna really help us push forward on some of the isms we think are really important.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much, Carla. And we're also very happy to have La Caixa on board as part of one of our signatories. I think you're a very good example also of very forward research assessment policies and initiatives. And I think that can also be really helpful in an inspiration for other research funders. So really happy to continue this discussion. As you said, we might have time for some questions, but I would like to do that at the end of all three presentations. So I would like to invite John.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is John Chodacki. I'm with the California Digital Library. I'm here with my colleague, Adam Buttrick, who's in the back there. As Bianca mentioned, we recently signed the Barcelona Declaration. We are the first U.S. university and entity to sign, so we were very proud of that. I think that, as Bianca was saying, there are a lot of gaps in the global landscape, and one of them that is very obvious is that in the US, there isn't yet the adoption that we all are looking for with this. So one of the things that we just wanted to talk about is why CDL signed, what process we went through, and then some observations about next steps. Just so everybody here is aware what CDL is, we are part of the University of California system. We were created as a central unit to really work on library and information science topics. We are a publishing library. We publish 90 plus journals. We are a infrastructure provider. We run global persistent identifier infrastructure. We are part of Crossref and data sites for years, the leadership. We also are part of, we're the central unit that does consolidated negotiations for the University of California system, which the budget and the output of the University of California system is in the range of a medium-sized European country. So it is something that is very substantial. And what we are trying to do at CDL is to work across that big system that we have at UC to help with digital library services, help with campus partnerships, but also really amplify the impact of the University of California and the state of California, not just from the library perspective, just the scholarship and the resources. And so why Barcelona Declaration? I mean, as many of you know, we are involved in a lot of initiatives to try to transform science and research into more open practices. I kind of feel like I'm in front of the slides, but maybe I'll move over a little. And so we see this Barcelona Declaration is directly related to our vision, our mission for why we exist. We are here to make sure that infrastructure and expertise and policies and practice are moving more towards open. So in some ways, the question is not like why we signed, but why didn't we sign earlier, or why did it take the Barcelona Declaration for us to decide that this was important? And I think that's something that we all here in the room and online are grappling with, is like, how do we take something that is an idea that we all knew is something we should have been focusing on and turn into practice? And we really saw the Barcelona Declaration as a strategic step and a framework for us and an opportunity for us to finally enact what we knew we wanted to work on and do. And also, as many things, takes the first to model behavior in your local context. And so we do definitely see this as trying to not only be impactful at UC, but also trying to model action across the US context. But one of the other reasons why we didn't sign immediately, or before the announcement of the Barcelona Declaration, some of us got, hey, would you like to sign it as part of the initial cohort? We intentionally said no, we don't want to. And why was that? It was because we felt like we weren't ready. We had this part of our ethos and our mission to focus on openness, but we hadn't really done the soul searching and the internal evaluation of what it would mean. So instead of actually signing immediately, what we did was we did an internal audit. Every program within CDL said, what kind of closed proprietary systems are we currently using? What kind of open infrastructure are we currently supporting, and in what ways? And we went through the process of evaluating and trying to align with other policy frameworks we have within the university. Many of you probably here have policies that are written either by administration or faculty. At the UC, we're a shared governance structure where the faculty and the administration set policy together. There is something that we call the UCLAS principles, which were an articulation from the researchers at University of California that they are expecting the administration and the university to move towards more open policies. And it explicitly mentions open metadata in the UCLAS principles. And so aligning that with our decisions on the Barcelona Declaration was very important to us. And we wanted to make sure that signing wasn't just symbolic, that it had some meat behind it, that we were making sure that we were creating intentional commitments internally. Also, within CDL, we have something that I think the University of California, and then also a lot of the OA movement has embraced, which is a pathways model, which is the idea that while we are all moving towards more open everything, we also know there are many ways to get there. And we embrace that even internally within CDL. There are groups that are working on transformative agreements and those that are working on green and gold OA and preprints revolution and open peer review and digital infrastructure. We see pathways to moving towards a new open future. And we really wanted to make sure that the Barcelona Declaration work that we're doing embraces all of those pathways. We are definitely known for having walked away from Elsevier and these types of things, but we're also known as going back to Elsevier when they met our demands. And so I think one of the things that we want to make sure that we think about in our implementation of the Barcelona Declaration is not just to immediately go to boycott, but really to think about how we can move it towards transforming the whole ecosystem. So what did we do? First, just say it's on the website, so you can go read. We did the full internal audit that we did. We published on our institutional repository as a model for not just the US, but for others to see the kind of work that we did. We wrote a blog post up on our Office of Scholarly Communication blog about the process, why we did it, what's the end result. It's not just about paying less money, it's about really being part of having open, transparent, auditable information. And we use this declaration as a way to create pathways for shifting our practice. And so we also used it as an opportunity for us to think about what more work is needed, not just at CDL, but in general. And really focusing on what are some of the existing limitations within the ecosystem. And so we've started a project with others here, PKP, others in the room who have been involved in it called Comet, which is about bringing together groups to talk about enriching metadata at scale and collaboratively with shared governance and open trust indicators and confidence scoring across different projects that are doing collaborative metadata enrichment. And so we've been trying to also start more discussions about what is the underlying information that still needs to be enriched and better for us to all be able to leverage open information at scale. So there's any questions, not just about what we're doing, but also why we did it and the kind of the process we went through, please touch base with Adam or I, and there's information on our website. So thank you.
Thanks very much, John, for sharing the internal process at an institution before deciding to sign the declaration. And I think it's a nice segue to the next presentation by Anna Ranitovic about what institutions do after they signed the declaration, how they collaborate.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Anna Ranitovic. I work as Chief of Open Science at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And well, today I will briefly present on the National Working Group of Dutch Barcelona Declaration signatories and say a few words about how working together can be helpful to move the declaration forward or to move from signature to action. Okay. So to start off, why a national working group? Well, for us in Groningen, it was really born out of a need. We needed a little help from our friends. So to speak, we, unlike what we heard in the previous talk, we signed quite early on. We were among the first to sign back in March of last year. And for us, getting the signature in part was easy because the declaration coincided with the publishing of our new institutional open science vision for the next 3 years, which puts, among other things, a great stress on the need for greater autonomy vis-a-vis commercial and closed systems, as well as on a greater need for transparency. However, and this was of course not entirely surprising to us, moving then from the signature to actually getting things moving and off the ground proved to be challenging in multiple ways. The commitments themselves don't mean tweaks or small changes. They actually require us to really rethink core university processes, from how we evaluate research, how we manage research outputs, how we select bibliographic and quiz systems, what do we prioritize in negotiations with publishers, and so on. And as a result, we're talking about a change that is disruptive, that challenges some longstanding organizational habits. And that means that we need, in order to move forward, we needed not only building leadership, but also having, or in our case, developing new know-how and skill sets, as well as allocating the necessary resources and time to the implementation teams to actually do the required work. In times of budget cuts, which is what we're facing in the Netherlands right now, there's a lot of scarcity, so that can be, of course, quite difficult. We've tried different strategies to deal with these challenges, and one idea that came up very early on was to simply reach out to the other signatories and to see whether they might have answers to some of the questions, but really also to come together, to put our heads together and see if we can make the most of the knowledge and the resources that we collectively have. I brought this idea to Ludo Woltman sometime around this time last year, and it was wonderful that he was very supportive of the idea, and soon enough, in July, we had our first meeting. We started quite informally. At the time, there were representatives of 7 institutions. Now that has grown to almost 20 members from 12 institutions, including national funders, the Association of Dutch Universities, our national IT organization for education and research. What has really helped is that we are, of course, connected by shared values and ambitions. At our first meeting, we started off reflecting on why our institution signed the declaration. And here are some common themes that emerged, which you've all already heard multiple times, I think, today. Moving on from there, we discussed some challenges and common struggles, and then tried to identify opportunities for collaboration as a group on national level. Based on all of that, we developed a sort of a collaborative structure that is centered around several joint priorities, interests, some of which I've listed here. Of course, it is a conversation and constantly evolving, but some of those include exploring open alternatives in a structured and collaborative way, rather than each institution doing it separately on its own, negotiations with existing vendors, reforming our research quality assurance system so that assessment would be based on open information-based metrics, if any at all, and so on. I think some of these also look familiar because they are in part reflected also in the international roadmaps ambitions. So it kind of shows that we're all facing similar issues worldwide. So what are some of then the benefits of working together? I think it is quite self-explanatory, but I will summarize perhaps the key benefits. Of course, first and foremost, it's peer learning and support. So connecting with others who have the same goals and are also facing the same challenges helps to really build confidence, both for us as individuals who are leading the change within our organization, but also for all of our colleagues locally who are involved. Related to that then is the benefit of efficiency. As I said, working, developing things from scratch in isolation is not always the best use of time. And what we really try to do is basically use what one university pilots, well, the others, we try to learn from that or even model. We've made quite a lot of use of that at Groningen. The third benefit is contributing to a broader culture change towards making open science the norm. We are a very diverse group of colleagues who are working on the transition from different angles. We're all part of various other working groups, networks, initiatives, projects, both locally as well as nationally. And what the group has also been quite helpful for is developing a joint position about what are some of the necessary conditions, not just locally, but also within the broader academic and policy ecosystem in the Netherlands to make the transition possible. And we then take this message into all these different avenues that we're part of, which helps embed, I think, or at least helps move towards embedding open research information into broad academic reform, such as the reform of the research assessment system or publication culture, to name two examples. And then finally, having the group has also been inspiring, not just for us signatories, but also for non-signatory but interested organizations, some of which have in the meantime joined our group, and we're very happy to have them to think along with us. To wrap up, some recommendations in case you're considering starting up. Well, there's no one-size-fits-all model, so really the recommendation is to do whatever works. What has worked for us is to start informally, and having just even a few committed organizations to begin with is also a good way to start. Mixing discussion with action, having some action points as a group is a great way to also ensure momentum and engagement. They don't have to be overly ambitious, but in line with what time permits and your priorities. Working and linking to existing projects and initiatives that are to do with open research information. So, for example, in the Netherlands, there are various national level projects. Some are ongoing, some are being developed right now that are to do with open infrastructures. So we try to find synergies and to link with those wherever possible. Then being inclusive and open to non-signatory organizations. And finally, also using events and festivals to exchange ideas with the broader open science community. So, for example, we developed last year an interactive workshop for the National Open Science Festival in the Netherlands. And it was a great way, of course, to raise visibility for the group and the declaration, but also for us to get input on ideas how to go about some of the challenges from the open science community at large. So that's a wrap from me. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you're interested in starting something for your region or at national level and would like to exchange some ideas, I'm very happy to connect.